Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome, welcome. I see a lot of folks are already online, so wait lang po tayo ng ilang pang minutes and we'll start in a very very short while. So, hello to those who are already in. I hope you're comfortable and ready to learn. Okay, so for those na hindi pa ready, I hope you are able to find your chat in YouTube Live. It should be somewhere in the bottom if naka-mobile kayo. If hindi kayo naka-mobile and if you're on desktop mode, then you should see the chat in the right-hand side of the screen. Ayun. So, I'm seeing messages come in. So, I hope you already see where the chat is because we're gonna use that across the rest of the live. So, we're gonna give folks maybe another minute before I start. But good evening and thanks for deciding to spend your Saturday night with me. And then hopefully this is something that's worthwhile. And then we'll talk about how we're gonna manage logistics in a bit. But hopefully you're all excited and hydrated and hopefully nakakain na kayo ng dinner and have the energy to stay for maybe the next hour or hour and a half. Okay. I think we have good enough attendance. So good evening again. If you're new to the revenue stream, this is actually my live stream portion of the vlog. So I'm PPE or Philip and I'm actually running the vlog called the Peso Pro episode. So this is just an offshoot of that. I'm doing this live to have more in-depth discussions on personal finance and money management tips. Sometimes yung video is maybe too short and what I typically get from friends is na may mga questions right after. So this is the perfect time for you to actually engage and interact. So let's make this fun. Very, very casual Saturday night. And I hope you guys take away something from this. Okay, so just before we dive into the meat of the matter, a few logistics. For those who are new to YouTube Live, this is not your typical Zoom meeting, so you don't have a lot of things to worry about. So basically, we're gonna interact via live chat. So I have a dashboard right in front of me, so I can see your comments. See most of you are ready, and I'm actually joined by my friends in the FinLit financial literacy Facebook page. So you guys are awesome, and I think most of you are already here in the chat. So thanks for joining, and I hope this one is a good learning experience for you. Shout out to Bro Energy for helping promote the stream. Right. The other thing is this video will probably not capture all of the things that we have to learn about investments. This is my second stream ever in this vlog and there's still a lot of things to talk about. So if you want to learn more about this, please feel free to subscribe. You can hit the button right there at the bottom right side of this video. Or if you're on another device, probably find it later on. So enough of that. I think you're able to find your way across YouTube Live. So let's get into it. Okay. So, as I said, this is the second version of the live stream or what I call the revenue stream for those who've noticed the pun. Thank you. This is my attempt to be at least funny, right? So, the goal of the live stream is to really think about how do we manage our financials. And I did the first episode about 2 weeks ago, and all of the replays are in the channel. So if you want to listen in on that one, you can also go back and just try that video on your spare time. Great. So let's go, right? A quick outline of what to expect tonight. And again, I hope that you are able to ask questions as I go along. I will try my best to follow the questions on the screen. But if I'm not able to answer your questions, just feel free to either tell me that I missed your question or copy paste the question again on the YouTube chat. Right? So outline very very quick. We are talking about investing, but in a practical sense. So what we're gonna talk about is just a very, very few outlines before investing and trying to set up ourselves for success. Sorry, and not being able to make choices and just dive into investing without being ready. But the meat of the live stream will also really cover the different types of investments that you can do, and more especially the how you can do it. So we're gonna try to see a few things, and I'm gonna run through a very, very few practical steps that you can take and that you can actually try out over the weekend or over your spare time. And then towards the end, we're gonna talk about a very simple um, tip or trick that I have in investment strategy on how I think about my own investments, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Okay, so thanks um, for joining. I see the chat is very much alive, so let's just get into it. So before we start, actually for this video, I'm actually talked about the 8 practical steps towards financial independence, and what I do want to start with is if you actually look at the 8 pro steps, you're actually gonna see that investments don't come at the start. And this is probably one of the most common pitfalls that people have, that typically dahil naririnig nila na, oh, maganda mag-invest, or parang cool mag-stocks or cool mag-invest sa crypto, or dahil na FOMO yung mga tao, dahil, oh, parang si Bitcoin nasa 40,000 and all of these kinds of things, sometimes we forget that there are actually quite a few basics to learn. And ideally, the ones in the box, in the yellow box, are all the things that you've taken care of. I'm not gonna talk about them in this video because that's not the meat of the matter, but I just want you to make sure that you've also already assessed your budget and savings habits, and also done your own preparation for your initial emergency fund, and you paid off any high interest debts. So this is typically any personal loans or any credit card debts, because any debt that is high interest is gonna be counterintuitive to the investments that you will probably do. So parang you're taking 1 step forward dahil nag-invest ka, but you're actually taking 2 steps back dahil may high interest debt ka pa na binabayaran. So I would really suggest that you prioritize that first before you go into any investment. Right? But after you do all of that, if you still want to learn about the 8 pro steps, that video is there in the channel, so you can always refer to that. But let's say all of you are okay, you're ready to go into the investment phase, so we can move forward. I'm just getting news from the chat that we actually reached about 1,000 subscribers. So this is like an important milestone. I did not expect to reach the 1,000 subscriber mark at this time during the live stream. So thank you to everyone who subscribed. It's a very, very important milestone. We're about 2 months in the Peso Pro episode. So thank you for the support, and I hope you continue to watch the videos that we will put up every week. Okay, so let's go ahead. A few more caveats just before we talk about investing. And I talked about this in the previous live stream, which is really trying to think about ano ba talaga yung pag-iisipan mo dapat before you invest. Right? And I codified it into PHP para madaling isipin. One is really, what is your purpose kung bakit ka ba talaga nag-i-invest? And if you are able to understand what the purpose is, it's gonna be a lot simpler for you to define ano ba yung strategy that you will take. You also talk about horizon, or what is the time that you have para mag-invest pa. Some cases, wala ka ng time because you already need the money maybe 1 year from now or 6 months from now. The strategy will really change depending on your horizon. And also, lastly, your profile or the amount of risk that you can take. So think about this as we go through the many different options that we will go through today. But I want you to think before you jump into something, kasi minsan nakaka-excite siya, especially if you're with friends who are very into investing, parang gusto natin mag-start agad-agad. Just take a step back and assess your PHP. And after that, I'm pretty sure you will be better off if you did not do it, versus that if you actually did and take the due diligence to make sure na alam mo kung saan ka nag-i-invest. Right? So after all of that preamble, I hope you guys are still okay. I breezed through that. If you want to learn more about these topics, please feel free to watch the previous stream where we go about basics of investing in depth para expound and explore yung topics on these first few slides. Okay. The last one in the preamble is risk. In all of these investments that we're gonna talk about, there's always gonna be risk. Merong iba na sobrang liit ng risk, it's virtually risk-free. Meron ding iba na ang risk ay napaka-apparent na mararamdaman mo talaga with the volatility of that certain investment. So I'm just putting it here so that you guys remember these few principles before we go into the meat of the matter. Okay? Cool. So let's go on the types of investments. The way I pattern this stream is that we're gonna talk about investments from two vantage points. One is yung time horizon, which is the one that you see on the right side of the screen, or the left side of the screen pala, sorry. On the left side, you will see the horizon, so that's number of years that when you still need the money, or number of years na meron ka pa para mag-invest. Right? At the bottom part, these are your average percentage returns per year. So, hindi to guaranteed. These are averages depending on the different kinds of investment strategies that you will place. And in true to form, my former manager and very, very close friend will be very happy. You can look at the disclaimers above. The returns are for informative purposes only. They're not meant to be guarantees. So in most cases, these returns can really fluctuate. So just take that into account. None of these are guaranteed, and they're all not financial advice. So please feel free to do your own due diligence before you actually dive in. Okay, so having said that, ito yung framework natin. We're gonna go from the safest ones. And obviously, because they're safe, typically the returns are also quite low. You would already see that on screen, that I'm talking about the more traditional instruments like your traditional savings account or your time deposits. Today, the time deposit rates are at an all-time low, and even your deposit rates are at an all-time low driven by the COVID pandemic. So typically, right now, the only thing that you will get from your savings account is mainly maybe a 0.1%. And I actually saw somewhere in Facebook na may mga banks na 0% interest if you deposit into that deposit account. Right? So just keep that in mind. And that's why we say, for the most part, the only reason na mag-keep ka ng balance in your bank account is for transactional purposes. So, mga panggastos mo araw-araw, pambayad mo ng bills, things that probably will not last more than 1 month in your bank account. That's okay to keep it there because anyway, mabilisan lang naman sila. Right? However, with the rise of digital banks, and you've seen this probably in your Facebook or Instagram pages, the rise of digital banks like CIMB, ING, Como, and the likes are all giving 3 to 4% interest rates, and the main difference for that is because wala silang operating expense, so they don't have a lot of branches. I think, for example, for CIMB, they actually only have one branch in all of the Philippines, right? There's just their main branch somewhere in Manila. So, imagine the amount of savings that they can actually get by not having all of these branches. Yun yung pinapasa nila as added interest. So, if you want to learn more, if you want to find some alternatives to traditional banks, the best way to do it is to try the digital banks and try to learn what you can get from this new technology that you can. Now, the last one that I'm going to talk about in this section is if you think about deposits and bank-related mga products, typically they're very, very low risk because typically all of them, as long as they are deposit accounts, they're covered by PDIC, or the insurance commission that insures your amount. So thanks, Energy. So CIMB, I think, is in BGC. So the headquarters is in BGC. Right? So all of these kinds of deposit accounts are guaranteed. And because they're guaranteed up to 500,000 per depositor per bank, typically, mababa talaga yung risk mo because even if the bank closes down, you're still safe. You will still be able to get your money. I actually have a friend that was unfortunately a victim to a bank closing down. If for the medyo not so millennials in the stream, you probably remember Banco Filipino maybe around maybe 15 years back when that bank actually closed down. A friend actually was able to recover the deposits from the insurance that is given by PBIC. So it actually works, at least from that experience. I don't have a personal experience when a bank actually closed on me. So I think we can be more or less safe and assured that they are really gonna pay you up until the 500,000 that you deposited. Okay. The next tranche in terms of risk are actually bonds. So si bonds, when you think about it, medyo sexy lang yung term, pero technically bonds are debt instruments, meaning somebody nangungutang sa'yo. Right? So in bonds, merong two types of bonds, either a government bond or a treasury bond, or you have a corporate bond, meaning negosyo yung nangungutang sa'yo. In the most recent bonds that you probably have seen on TV or in Facebook, the most recent ones are the government premio bonds. Probably you've seen that where they give a certain amount of interest and then premio dahil if you buy the bonds, you can actually earn a raffle entry that you will win a prize if you get selected in that raffle draw. So may mga ganong options. The other ones from a corporate bond standpoint, one of the more recent ones is Union Bank issued bonds, meaning si Union Bank is borrowing money from the public and you can actually lend money to Union Bank. So pabaliktad, ikaw yung nagpapautang sa bank and then the bank will pay you a certain amount of interest for a certain amount of years. So, relatively safe. Typically, bonds are about 3 to 5 years maturity. It can be longer or shorter than that, but on average, it's at about 3 to 5 years. The other one that's probably more famous now because of the surging amount of deposits is the Pag-ibig MP2. So the Pag-ibig MP2 is a voluntary deposit account that you have with the Pag-ibig Fund, so the actual housing authority, that you can deposit there. The funds are gonna be kept there for 5 years and you will earn a decent amount of interest. And the good part about Pag-ibig MP2 is that the interest or the dividends that you earn from Pag-ibig MP2 are actually tax-free and the total amount of deposits that you place into the fund are government guaranteed. So hindi lang siya 500,000, even if you put in 1,000,000, the whole million principal is guaranteed by the government just in case something happens to the Pag-ibig fund. Okay. You may notice that I am speaking very, very fast. And the reason for that is I did not intend to cover all of this. So, para hindi kayo hingalin na para to catch up with that pace, I actually have put some of the different videos that are already up. And these 3 videos talk about all of those 4 different kinds of investments or deposit accounts that you can take a look at after this if you're interested in any of them. I won't talk through them in this stream, but feel free to go through these videos after the stream. Okay, now to the meat, which I think what you guys are after in this stream. So let's now talk about this whole big world of mutual funds or UITFs, or I club them all into a term called as managed funds. And in managed funds, now you would see that in the graph, makita mo na yung managed funds ay napakalawak ng choices mo. And I wanted to take time in this stream to actually explain what are the differences of mutual funds. Are they actually any good, or parang ano ba to? Parang ano ba to, or babalik ba yung pera ko? Am I putting my money at risk? All of these kinds of questions are the ones that I typically get. So in the next few slides, we're gonna go through mutual funds or managed funds in particular. So just make sure to ask your question. If I touch on a point that's not very, very clear, I will try to answer them. For the ones who are asking questions, I do notice your questions. I'm parking some of them because we're gonna talk about different kinds of investments overall. So let's see later. Once that comes up, I'll go back to your question. Okay. So managed funds are essentially, isipin nyo lang na parang ganito siya. Managed funds are what they are. It's a fund, a big amount of money that people put into and minamanage siya ng isang fund manager. So essentially, if you don't have any experience in trading, hindi ka marunong kung saan mo siya ilalagay, what stocks to pick, or maglalagay ba ako sa bond, sobrang nakakalito siya, PPE, ang daming options. One of the best choices that you can actually do is to just take managed funds. The other one, before going into the different kinds of funds, is sometimes you actually don't know but nag-i-invest na kayo sa isang fund. And I'll tell you why. In most cases, managed funds are the go-to investments of a lot of institutions kasi, number one, you technically take the guesswork away from you as the investor or as the institution at nilalagay mo siya into somebody's loving arms, like the fund manager who manages the fund. The fund manager has your best interest at heart. Why? Because if the fund actually performs well, then logic will tell you that more people will buy into the fund. Follow me so far? So if okay yung performance ng fund, maniniwala yung mga tao na, okay pala ito na investment, I will buy more units or I will put in more money into the fund. In that way, because fund managers earn as a percentage of the total fund being managed, then they also earn more if lumalaki yung fund na minamanage nila. So think about it as parang in-outsource mo yung pag-manage ng fund mo. You don't even have to think about your own allocation anymore. So this is a great way for institutions to actually outsource that portion, especially if the institution, like your company, is not a pro in managing investments. One of the most common things, and for the ones who are in the same company as I am, our pension fund is actually managed via a managed fund. So, what you end up choosing is pipili ka lang ng ang risk appetite mo, but essentially they will give you a few options on what kinds of funds can you choose, and then may isa ng fund manager na magmamanage ang lahat ng yun. Okay, I think the point is more or less clear. Now, in terms of managed funds, this is where it gets a bit confusing for the newbie investor. There are many kinds of names that people call managed funds. So, yung una is probably the most common one that you will hear are mutual funds. Meron ding UITF or Unit Investment Trust Funds. Apologies for the typo. So, Unit Investment Trust Funds, or meron ding ETF or Exchange Traded Fund, and meron din Variable Unit Linked or VULs. Some of these letters or acronyms you probably have heard if a financial advisor went to you to offer a service, or if you go to the bank. Some cases, the relationship officer assigned to you or the person you're talking to the bank will actually offer you some of these services. Now, there are a few differences among them, but think about na lahat sila managed funds. So, the nature of these funds ay pare-pareho lamang. Nagkakaiba lang kung sino yung nagmamanage sa kanila. So, for example, for mutual funds, it's an investment mutual fund company. So, maybe the most famous ones are Sun Life, Philm Life, or ATRAM, if you've seen more recent news on these funds. There are a lot more, but essentially these are companies who really do investment mutual fund management. UITFs, however, are being managed by a bank. So typically, pag pumunta ka, for example, my bank is BPI. If I go to BPI, they actually have a version of the mutual fund, pero they call it a different way. In a lot of cases, maybe like 98%, they're actually very similar. There will be some differences in terms of fees and ano ba yung mga charge ng different institutions, but for the most part, they're the same. Now, the exchange-traded fund is probably the one that's a bit more different. Sa exchange-traded fund, as the name suggests, you actually have a ticker symbol in the stock market. So, parang bumili ka lang nito ng stock. So, what you can actually do is you can go to the stock market if you have a brokerage account and purchase an ETF. In the Philippines, there's only one ETF. So, medyo wala tayong choice. That's the FM ETF or the First exchange traded fund. That FMETF technically is investing in the PSEI as an index. So yung top 30 companies in the PSEI comprising the index, ginagaya lang niya. So what's so special about the FMETF or an ETF in this matter? ETF, meaning managed pa rin siya na fund because you're not buying one stock or a certain security, you're actually buying a basket of stocks. So, in a sense, you're technically doing something like a mutual fund execution. Pero yung kinaibahan lang, instead of going to a mutual fund company or a bank, you actually go directly into the stock market via your brokerage account and then you actually buy an FM ETF unit. Pag nabili mo na yon, you're technically buying the 30 underlying companies in that FM ETF. Okay, I'm gonna wait for comments to come in. If I don't get any questions, I am assuming that part is clear. So medyo challenging lang. If that's not clear, just post some questions in the comment section. Now, the last one is variable unit link or VUL. So if you probably talk to an insurance agent or a financial advisor, this VUL product may have come up already. So if you think about it, it's variable unit link. The name says it all. It's variable because it's moving, hindi siya fixed. It's a unit dahil may binibili kang unit, and it's a link fund because it is technically a mutual fund that is linked into your insurance policy. So think about it this way. The typical explanation of what a VUL is, it's an insurance policy that has an investment component with it, which is actually true. So essentially, if you are already a policy owner of a VUL, whether you knew or not at the time na nag-purchase kayo ng policy nyo, you're actually investing in a mutual fund. So meaning, you're investing in whatever mutual fund is attached to that insurance policy. Okay. So hopefully medyo na-clarify yung different kinds of managed funds. They can be a bit confusing, but they're actually very similar if you really think about it. Now, instead of all of these kinds of managed funds, I also want to talk about ano ba yung mga laman nila, because this is really where it matters, and this is really why in the original chart that I showed you, I said that the return of managed funds can be as low as 1%, and it can be as high as maybe 15% or more. So, bakit sobrang laki ng disparity, right? So, like, the range is very, very high. Is it because na sobrang risky ng managed funds? And the answer is no. In terms of managed funds, whether it's a mutual fund, a UITF, an ETF, or a VUL attached to a mutual fund, the big discrepancy on the returns actually is not where you buy the product itself. The big discrepancy is coming from nasaan ba naka-invest yung funds mo in the one that you chose. So these are some of the more common ones that you see in the market. So money market fund being probably, I think, one of the more known funds, and medyo sexy lang siya pakinggan, but in reality, these are just funds that are invested in time deposits. If you look at the fund, a lot of it, or the majority of the amount, ay nakalagay lang po siya sa loob ng or more time deposits in different banks. So it's no different than you just buying different time deposits on your own. Equity Index Fund is, as the name says it tracks the Philippine Stock Exchange Index of the top 30 stocks. If we later on talk about maybe global or US index funds, there are a lot more options. But for the Philippines, we have the PSEI, and that's about it. The bond fund is, again, a fund that consists of several bonds, be it corporate or treasury. Ang namimili kung ano yung pag-iinvesta niya na bonds is the fund manager, not you. So you're already sort of diversified from this angle. Then you also have managed equity funds. Essentially, it's an equity fund, meaning stocks yung underlying components, but hindi siya sumusunod sa isang index. So, pwedeng, for example, may fund na we say consumer goods lang yung iniinvestan niya. So, obviously, you can expect that the big players in banks, for example, like BDO, BPI, Metrobank, will not be in that fund. But you would see more stocks like Pure Gold and maybe JFC, Jollibee Foods, because they're all consumer related. So kung gusto mo na consumer related yung paglalagay ng pera mo, you can actually get a managed equity fund. Again, it's still a basket of stocks, so wala namang nag-iba dun. Ang mangyayari lang, instead of you buying into the index ng PSEI, which is based on the top 30 stocks, this one, namimili si fund manager ng kung ano yung mga bets niya na paglagyan ng mga stock. And then the last one is a balanced fund. And as the name suggests, it really is a balanced fund kasi pinaghalo-halo lang siya na mga different kinds of funds. So, pwedeng may konting money market, may konting equity, konting bonds within it. So, yun yung many different kinds of funds, and so not with no intention to confuse you or to scare you into thinking about managed funds. I can show you actually a few examples of how you can get this. So what you can do is you can actually avail of different kinds of funds via your online platforms. The more common ones would be your broker. So, pwede si Call Financial if you have a Call Financial account. You can actually buy a mutual fund inside the Call Financial service, and you can have a lot of different options like the ones you see on screen. The more common one is SeedBox Philippines, and I think a bit more new, but a bit also easier to apply for because SeedBox actually offers different kinds of ATRAM company products within the SeedBox platform. So I'll go through this and then I'll show you in a bit on where you can check all of these out, and then I'll also share the links right after the live stream para pwede niyong balikan, and then you can also do your own studies. The other one, and I think probably some people don't know this, but GCash actually has invest money in it. So the invest money portion, nasa medyo baba siya na portion when you open your GCash app. Under that thing, you can actually select invest money, and from your balance or your wallet in GCash, you can actually buy a unit of the available funds. Today, the available funds that are in GCash, GInvest is very, very limited. Like as in isa lang siya. And it's a money market fund. And you will see that it's an ATRAM money market fund. In the future, and I learned this from Henry, who is in the chat, who is actually answering questions for me. So thank you very much. I've learned that actually ATRAM wants to add a few more fund options that you will be able to choose from. So not yung money market fund lang, which is probably like only time deposits yung underlying assets. You can now also avail of the other ATRAM packages and maybe other packages from other providers in the future. Okay, the last one, and I think also some people don't know that you can actually buy a fund from your bank. So in my case, for example, we would have BPI Asset Management, and you would be able to actually go into BPI Asset Management, open an account, and parang ma-add lang siya into your online account, and you can start putting in money into a fund. So all of these great features are actually very, very accessible, right? So you actually, we actually talk about a few of them. I will show you in live how some of these things work. So what you can see on screen are different kinds of policies. So I'm sharing maybe two for now, but you can always go through the different kinds of websites for different kinds of banks and different service providers. So for example, for BPI Asset Management, you can just go to the BPI Asset Management website. It will land you here as soon as you click on products and services. And from here, makikita nyo na sobrang daming options for different kinds of investments. So, meron siyang short term, may money market din siya, bond, balance, etc. So, medyo madaming pagpipilian. You also will see that there are also options that you can actually get a global equity feeder fund, meaning hindi lang Philippine stocks yung pinag-i-investan nito. Or you can also get a US equity index feeder fund, which means that this fund actually buys US-based equities or stocks as the underlying asset. So maraming options, even just within BPI. So within BPI, if your main bank is already BPI, that may make sense. You can also do the call financial step if you are able to open an account with them. I personally don't have a call financial account, so I cannot do a demo, but I got that screenshot from a friend. The other one is SeedBox, and I actually like SeedBox, although they're still in beta website. Today, what you can do is you can actually go into seedbox.ph and you can go through the process of signing up. You don't have to put money at the moment of signing up, so you can just set up an account even if you don't have the funds yet. You can then do you can then do an account, and from here you can actually check the products na meron si Seedbox. Now, Seedbox right now is tied with ATRAM, the same company who's running the GCash in G-Invest option. And from here, you will be able to see different ATRAM packages. So you can actually buy different kinds of UITFs or mutual funds depending on what you want. So you will have Philippine equity, money market, bond funds, etc. You can also have very specific ones like global financial feeder fund. So this is probably, without having to look into it, this is probably giving us many different kinds of stocks across many different countries. Meron ding mga consumer trends lang, etc. etc. So you can actually go to this website and maybe click on one of the boxes, and then what it will tell you is are the terms of how you can avail these products. So what you can do is just look. Most of the UITFs or mutual funds will either have a starting point of 1,000 pesos or 10,000 pesos. That's the normal starting point. In this case, for Seedbox, it's 1,000. So you can actually open with 1,000 pesos and just begin investing. Then what you can do is you can click on the allocation portion and download the fund fact sheets, which will tell you exactly where the fund is being invested. So it will tell you, okay, what's the logic of the fund. It will tell you historical performance, and it would also tell you the top 10 holdings of this fund. So in this case, for example, the top 10 holdings are tech stocks in the US, so Amazon and Alibaba, and then you have Lowe's, Nintendo, etc., etc. A lot of consumer products because this one is a consumer global trend feeder fund. I think you probably get the what I mean by when you choose different kinds of funds, you actually are able to select kung saan niya ilalagay somewhere along the lines of kung may gusto kayong specific na for example, industry or trend na i-ride, you can actually select the right fund for you. So marami siyang options, and I think I actually like going through most of them and trying to figure out which ones are actually doing well. Okay, I will pause first kasi medyo madami-dami na yung napag-usapan natin. And so, any questions on funds before I actually move on to the next type of investment? Yes, Jairo, sorry, na-feel ko rin yon. So even I myself a bit parched for water. So I will drink water, and if you have any questions on funds, we can go back to specific questions. Right? So Janine says it's maybe a bit simpler to do Seedbox. It's more user friendly. You can actually open an account very, very easily. So you can check that out. It's no fee to start, but you can also put in as little as 1,000 pesos to actually begin investing. Okay lang yan. So we can take it slowly. Any more questions on funds? Yeah, so Ivy, I saw your comment actually for GCash. You can take a look. I think they're figuring out of adding more kinds of investment opportunities within G Invest. So you actually don't need to open a Seedbox account if that happens, because some of these funds will be available directly within GCash. So hindi na kailangan na gumawa pa ng separate account. You can do all of it from your GCash app, which makes it a bit more simpler kasi may pera ka na ideally from that from that wallet. So you can also do that too. And Marie, thanks for sharing this. I think SeedBox is more or less quite new. So, hindi pa siya as established as Call maybe. But I actually like the interface na meron si SeedBox kasi parang nag-view ka lang from an online shopping perspective. So, parang pumili ka lang ng item, you look at the description, and then if you want, you can actually top up once may account ka na. You can top up and then you can actually just pay for it using your local bank. Okay, cool. So I hope you learn about SeedBox. If I feel actually that maybe a video on SeedBox that can help explain as soon as I am able to do it myself. So I can probably make another video to cover more specifics about SeedBox. Okay. So, Boyang has a question on, which I think is a very good question on while we talk about investments and all of this, what if, for example, hindi ka patapos dun sa steps 1 to 4 that we were talking about earlier? When, for example, wala ka bang emergency fund or may binabayaran ka pang high interest debt, maybe you carry a balance in your credit card, for example, which today is a 2% per month. So, 24% per annum yun na interest rate, right? So, even if you earn, say, 6 to 10% in your investment, then you're actually losing on the interest that you pay your credit cards. So, one thing that I would say is actually if you're still very curious on how to invest, I would say that exactly what you said, you can start small and try to learn it as you still manage the step 1 to 4. So, what does that mean? For example, the most important piece pa rin is that you build your emergency fund and you actually make sure that all of your high interest debts are covered para hindi ka na nagbabayad ng mas malaking interest on that debt. Now, what you can do as you prioritize the first 4 and if you're making your way there, what you can do is you can probably try 1 or 2. What you can also leverage, and later on I'll share, in some of these investments, there are actually virtual wallets that you can play with. So parang meron ka lang virtual fund na pwede mong paglaruan in the platform. It's not real money, but at least you learn on how to invest. In some cases, you can also do ng parang tingi-tingi na style. So you can open it with a 1,000 peso first and then try to understand how the investment option is working for you. And if you learn more and if you're ready after the first 4 steps, then you can actually kick into higher gear na. Mas focus mo na yung investment because from here, if nabayaran mo na lahat ng mga utang na high interest, then the money that you were paying to those debts can actually go into your investment account. So that's a very, very good question because I think in most cases, we also don't know which ones to prioritize depending on our life stage. Okay. Justine is asking also, when you use SeedBox, do you need to continuously add money to the fund? Or will it grow if you just add a balance once? Or does this work when you get your ROI? Okay, so I think I get your question. So in SeedBox or in any mutual fund, think about it this way. When you buy into a fund, regardless kung saan mo siya binili, kung naglagay ka ng one amount, that one amount is bought at a certain unit price. So, for easy reference, let's say you bought 1,000 pesos tapos yung per unit ay 100. Okay. So, meaning, when you bought in, you actually bought 10 units. Right? Those 10 units already nakapangalan na yun sa'yo. So, you already are participating in the fund. And for example, let's say, 6 months, hindi ka nakadagdag. That 1,000, yun lang yung nilagay mo, hinayaan mo lang dun. What you can do is because these funds don't have a minimum required recurring investment, so pwedeng one time lang. There are also some funds na nagre-require na every month magka-top up ka talaga. So just make sure you read the fine print. So for example, if I take BPI, pwede ka mag one time lang. So you can put in 1,000 and let's say maybe 6 months from now kapag magkaka-extra na money ulit, that's perfectly fine. What would happen though is your fund value actually moves technically every day. So that fund value moves. So let's say for example, yung 10 units mo na yun that you bought at 100 pesos becomes yung unit price niya naging 110 na after 6 months. So then your 1,000 pesos becomes 110 times 10 or naging 1,100. So meron ka na technically gain na nakalagay doon sa fund mo. So when you are about to withdraw your funds from the total mutual fund, you will actually get 1,100. So may gain ka talaga even if you don't add continuously to the fund. Now, obviously, the more you add and the more frequent you add will help in compounding and it will improve your ROI significantly over time. So as you add more, then you're buying more units as you buy. And as you stay in the fund, then the chances are your fund will actually grow. Obviously, I will also be remiss to say kung hindi ko sasabihin that there are also chances where the fund value can go down. Hindi na tayo lalayo. If you look at the fund values of all of these funds, or at least most of them, in March 2020, you would see na sobrang baba ng fund value at that point in time. And this is because this is we were in the heat of the COVID pandemic na lahat ng mga lockdowns nangyari across the world. So the stock market actually plummeted. So maybe yung 100 pesos mo na unit could have been maybe 20 pesos lang at that time, right? I don't know the exact number. But then, in that case, if you withdrew from that point in time, meaning yung 10 units mo, tig 20 pesos lang siya, so you're only withdraw 200 pesos. So that's how the funds sort of work. And maybe if you're more attuned to stock investing, they work exactly like a stock. So kung ano yung price at a certain point in time that you bought, and when you redeem, that will be the gain that you will get from it. However, historical data tells us that when you keep the funds long enough, the market eventually grows and you will more or less have gains if you hold long enough and don't sell at a loss. So hopefully nakatulong yon. I know it's a bit tricky, but just think, pag nakalagay ka na, pasok ka na dun sa fund, whatever happens to the fund, kasama ka na dun, whether up or down yung market. Okay. Cool. Thanks for the questions. Very, very interesting. I'll pause answering questions first, but I see Justin and Steph asking questions. I will get to that in a bit because those are a bit more tricky to answer. Okay, so I think mutual funds, more or less, you can follow the logic behind them. They're all managed funds. They're just being sold or provided by different entities. Pero technically, nakapool lang yung pera natin and lahat tayo nag-share in the profit or loss of that fund. Okay. Now we can go to alternative investments. And this one is a bit new for the Philippines. I think maybe just about 2019 to 2020 is when we saw a lot more of these new kinds of alternative investments. And when I talk about alternative investments, the returns can actually vary a bit. So what you can do is maybe like a 6 to 15% range based on the current estimates. And typically, you would be asked to keep these alternative investments within 1 to 3 years. Or maybe even shorter for some. I'm talking about alternative investments called peer-to-peer lending or crowdfunding. So maybe just a brief explanation of what these two are. So peer-to-peer lending is what the name suggests. It is lending, so it is pautang, but in a digital way. So think about it, for example, that I will need to borrow money from someone else. This platform actually allows me to borrow from many people. So, for example, isa akong company, I need maybe 1 million pesos. And so, wala magpapautang sa akin ng 1 million pesos na isang buo. So, what I will do is I can actually tap into this peer-to-peer lending platform so that you can maximize the reach of the platform and maybe may magpapautang sa akin na 20 people of 50,000 each. Right? So, that's exactly what happens in peer-to-peer lending. Crowdfunding works in a similar way. However, in crowdfunding, you're not actually lending money to the person or the institution. You're actually funding a project. And I'm going to talk about these two platforms that I personally have. There are a few more platforms in the market, but I feel like from a user experience standpoint and from a reliability standpoint, these two are probably one of the best options that you have if you want to dive into alternative investments. Now, not to say though that alternative investments don't come with risk. What you are going to think about is pag nilagay ko yung pera ko somewhere, always think about saan ba siya napupunta eventually. So in peer-to-peer lending, technically, pinapautang yung pera mo. In crowdfunding, you're actually funding a project. Right? So, yun lang yung isipin nyo as we go through a few examples of what you can actually get once you enter into these alternative investments. So I'm just gonna close the ones that we were talking about. So let's talk about Seedin first. So what is Seedin? Seedin is basically, in the most simplest of terms, is essentially a way for businesses to borrow from the crowd or from the people who are investors and try to fund those funding needs that they have. So as of today, Seedin actually is claiming that they actually already funded about 600 million pesos worth of funds to businesses across 136 projects with an average annual return of 6%. So still higher than your bank or even your digital bank, although it comes with some risk because, as you can imagine, the item behind this is actually a debt, right? So for example, kung hindi siya magbayad, then you run the risk of also losing money on this. So in Seedin, basically it's peer-to-peer business financing. So a company can borrow funds from the general public, and then the general public will be able to put in money to support that fund. So what you can actually see, if you just scroll, you can open an account entirely online, and you don't have to go to a physical branch to be able to open this. Now, Seedin obviously has a lot of background checks to the companies that they allow into their platform. So you can also read through a lot of these. But in most cases, the returns can range from 7 to up until 20% was the highest one I found before. And the interest rates can be a monthly repayment. I will actually show you my account in Seedin so that you can get a sense as to what happens if you put money in here. So what you will see is, once you have an account, you will see all of these projects that you can get, and you will see what the gross return per year is. So in most cases, mga nasa 10 to 14% range siya. And then you will know the tenure, gaano katagal yung loan, and then ilan days pa ba left for the loan to mature. So basically, these are all of the funds, all of the loans that you can fund. And then you can go to your dashboard, you can fund money in it, and whatever you have in there, you can either manually select kung sino yung gusto mong pag-investan na loan, because behind all of these loans, you can actually select or see who the company is behind that loan. So malalaman mo kung sino siya, anong industry yung company na yon, ilang beses na ba siya nag-loan from Seedin, and then you would be able to see your own amount. So for example, I actually tried this maybe about 6 months ago. So I have a few funds invested here, and I'm trying to figure out kung paano ko siya mapapalago. What you can do is you can then look at available investments. Right now, there's none, which is actually the drawback of Seedin. So ang nangyayari minsan when there's a project, because there's a lot of support from the public na uubos agad, so you can actually click on Alfred Auto Invest, and Alfred is just the name of the bot that they use. Alfred will help you allocate the funds that you place into your wallet para siya na yung mag-i-invest for you on the projects na sinet mo na certain criteria. I won't belabor the point on Seedin and Alfred's capabilities, but essentially think about it as pag nilagay mo na yung pera mo, you set certain criteria, and then once that certain criteria is hit, Alfred will auto-allocate to everyone who has the same criteria as you. Then what Seedin does is it gives you interest per month, or it can be at the end of the project. So this is also a way for you to earn passive income. The good thing about this is that the interest rate is fixed, so you know exactly how much you will get by when. So I actually think this can be a good diversification strategy, for example, for retirees who no longer have fixed income every month, kasi dito malalaman mo talaga kung magkano yung yung returns na papasok sa on a monthly basis. Then we go into Flint. Flint acts similarly, but see, Flint is a bit different because what you're actually investing in are different kinds of investments like properties. And what they do is, instead of, for example, you actually buying a property which can be very, very expensive, what they do is all of these available investments you can fund in part. The lowest amount that you can place is 1,000 pesos. So in 1,000 pesos, you can actually be part of this studio unit. Naka-gray out lang siya kasi funded na yung project. If the project is not yet funded, you will be able to see the amount, the rate, and all of these details so that you can decide to fund it also. Now, Henry, who is a good friend of mine, is actually leading a Facebook group on financial literacy. You can follow or join that Facebook group. It's very, very good. I actually learned a lot of new tips and tricks from that group as well. Actually wrote a really good blog on Flint and crowdfunding. So I'm gonna link this down in the replay video of the stream. But essentially, what I wanted to point out in this blog is that you can actually get a balloon payment. So parang interest lang yung binabayad every month. And then the last month is principal and interest. Or pwede ding equal na technically it's the principal and interest divided into the number of months. Right? So those are two of the alternative investments that you can actually look into. Yung maganda, because these two are very, very new, so they actually offer somewhat higher return. If you think about the alternative investments, they are actually well thought of. Kasi when you think about it, makikita mo siya agad na kung saan ka nag-i-invest, ano ba yung ini-investan mo, kailan bababalik sa'yo. So I think I'm quite impressed with how far they come with just maybe about a year or so, and I'm pretty sure that they will continue to build on what they currently have. So cool. I'm seeing a few questions. So Henry, thanks again for allowing me to use your blog in this stream. Very, very helpful. Henry also talks about different kinds of investments in his blog. So if you want to go in depth and try to read a lot more on these things, that blog is very, very good. So, shall we? I think the question is, what made you decide to actually go with alternative investments? So, for me, to be honest, it started with testing the waters lang if this actually works. So, I'm a bit skeptical in terms of, so kung may mangutang na company, will this company really pay me back? Or how does this actually work, right? And what I've learned in the past, maybe for Seedin, I'm a bit, mga 5 months na. So I actually received one of the first few payouts already. And kay Flint, hindi pa ako nagsa-start na maglagay talaga ng money kasi laging nauubusan ng allocation. So I think I need to watch more closely in Flint. But essentially, what made me decide is, number one, it's a bit higher return for money that may be sitting in a bank account. So that can be an option as well. If you have other investments, maybe in a cooperative, for example, that's suddenly not providing the returns you expect, or maybe time deposits. I know there was a time that time deposits were returning maybe 2 to 3% per year. Ngayon, nasa parang 1%, masaya ka na because mataas na yun. So if you want to get higher returns, I would suggest opening yourself to the alternative investments. Now, I would also caution though that they are actually quite new to the Philippines. So medyo tiyaga lang konti minsan, like the website can be quite laggy, or sometimes medyo mabilis maubos yung allocations because they're also figuring it out. But in at least for everyone who I know have invested in these two, I've gotten generally positive reviews. So you can actually try them out. I think there are questions also for okay. So I think we talked about alternative investments, and if you want to go through with them, opening an account is actually free, so you can go through the process and then you can try it out. You can see all of those items there, even if you don't have money in them, if you just want to learn first, which I think is a good part because it's a new technology. So I'm pretty sure my skeptic side of all of us, and I think that's just the right thing to do because this is your hard-earned money. I'll link to these two sites in the description after the live stream so that you can go to them directly. I will also add some referral links. I will get a small commission if you use those links, but that is totally up to you. But I would really appreciate if you use it. And then I would also add the link to the FinLit group, definitely, so that if you want to learn more about personal finance or have a community help you go through questions and think through kung may mga gusto ba kayong um, i-consult maybe informally to a broader group who have different backgrounds, then it's a perfect place for you to start. Okay, so let me pause first and I'll try to just scrub through different kinds of questions to see if may hindi tayo nasagot. But I think we are more or less okay. And I will go back to a few questions because these ones are a bit more in depth. So I will go back to them, Justin and Steph, later, I promise. Let me close out the last two things that we actually have in our chart. So now just focus your eyes up top. So I didn't know where to put them, but essentially I'm talking about individual stocks and cryptocurrency. Right? So individual stocks are basically you buy a share in the company and you are hoping that you will earn money from the fluctuation in price or called capital appreciation. So tumaas yung price. Or you get income from the dividends na binalik ng company to the investors. So this is the way the company gives back its investors some return on the money that they kept with the company for the amount of time. Okay, so that's individual stocks. And cryptocurrency, you probably heard about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a lot of other things. Ripple, Dogecoin, which has blown up in the past few days, plus 600%. I'm being very conservative when I say crypto can be plus minus 40%. It can be much bigger than this. You can lose money or you can actually gain a lot of money also. So in these two things, I'm actually setting them and talking about them together because they're actually in about the same range of risk. So when you put your money into stocks or crypto, essentially you're hedging that when you buy, tataas yung price. So yun yung general logic of it. Now, there are many different kinds of opinions kung okay ba maglagay to individual stocks, okay ba lang maglagay to crypto, and I probably answer that in two ways. Number one, for stocks and crypto, and I mean stocks na individual stocks, the best hedge that you can get because you can never time the market correctly. I mean, if we only knew kung kailan babagsak yung price at aakyat siya, we would all be maybe millionaires by now. But essentially, no one can really predict. Everyone who has a prediction is really just giving their own opinion. So, in these cases, it's true for both stocks and crypto. Since you don't know kung kailan yung rise and fall ng market, your best bet is to give yourself time. And that's why I said for stocks and crypto, the best way for you to hedge your luck in these two is to allow yourself a long horizon. So ideally, give yourself about 15 to 20 years when you think about investing in direct stocks and crypto. The reason for that is whenever there is a big fluctuation in price, typically people panic sell or panic buy. So, for example, a good example of panic buying is, for example, si Bitcoin, hala, pataas na siya ng pataas ng pataas. So, in the risk of missing out or ma-FOMO kind of feeling, you actually buy at a certain price. And maybe you bought at 39,000 kasi naniniwala ka sa sabi nila na Bitcoin will reach $100,000 per Bitcoin by the end of the year. However, if you look at the charts, Bitcoin never breached 39,000 again, maybe only 2 times lang in the last 4 weeks. So I don't know if that's gonna happen. But sometimes when you panic buy, you actually buy at the higher end of the rates. An example also of panic selling is, for example naman, bumabagsak yung price. So, parang natakot ka na if you have stocks in there. So, what you ended up doing is mag-sell out ka na lang kasi para ma-stop mo na yung loss mo. So, for example, naka 50% loss ka na, takot ka na madagdagan pa yung loss mo. So, what you will actually do is just panic sell only to figure out na baka tataas naman pala yung price eventually. And we've all seen this in the recent year when the COVID pandemic struck in March, bagsak talaga lahat ng stocks. So that's actually mga 50 to 60% loss. And if you panic and sell and sold during that time, then you would have actually missed the time na umakyat siya ulit after April, for example. So there's a lot of volatility in stocks and crypto, and that's why I really suggest that you put a lot of time buffer na hindi nyo kailangan yung money. The worst thing is that you put your emergency funds in stocks and crypto because you never know when you need an emergency, and you also never know kung kailan babagsak or akyat yung price nitong stocks and crypto. So you're actually putting yourself in a lot of uncertainty, which is not very, very good financial management. Okay. Now, what we're gonna talk about though, because stocks and crypto are, I think, a bit more becoming more mainstream. So you can actually do stocks in two ways. You can do, or in crypto also, you can do day trading, which is the more active buying and selling. So you're really trying to find ways to earn from market fluctuations, meaning buy low, sell high. Or you can also do a peso or dollar cost averaging approach. So what this just means is that you just keep on buying in regular intervals in the amount that you set, and then over time the average price of the share sort of averages out. To illustrate, in day trading, ang ginagawa is nag-speculate ka kung kailan ba aakyat yung share para bumili ka at a point na mababa pa. So one example is you probably bought a Dito share, which is probably one of the most famous stocks in recent news cycles. Dito, I think, was trading maybe around December at about 8 or 9 peso per share. And then ideally, nag-hope ka that the Dito price would actually go up. And it did. In early January, the stock price of Dito was actually about 14 pesos. So if you were able to buy in at those two time frames and you sold, then you actually gained 6 pesos in maybe 2 to 3 weeks, right? Times the number of shares that you bought. So this is the day trading approach. Very, very risky because again, who would know na tataas ba talaga si Dito or further babagsak pa siya? Now, in the peso or dollar cost averaging approach, what you would do is you're not timing the market and you're more in it for the long haul, which is actually what I recommend, especially for newbie or beginner investors, or even some very experienced investors, because this has been at least a proven way that you can build and accumulate wealth over time. So si peso and cost averaging naman, para hindi man nosebleed, ito yung gagawin natin. What I will do is I will, for example, January 1, nag-New Year's resolution ako na mag-i-invest na talaga ako in a stock. So I bought the stock at 100 pesos. Bumili ako ng 1 share lang para madali nating i-average. So I bought 100 pesos, 1 share. And then, next sweldo cycle, Feb 1, bumili ulit ako ng 100 pesos worth. However, yung price nung share na yun was only 50 pesos na lang. Bumagsak pala yung company na yun by 50%. So, medyo intense lang yung example, but let's just say that happened that way. If you were a day trader, you would probably have not held on to the stock for a full month kasi nag-speculate ka kung kailan siya aakyat. But if natatakot ka for the short-term fluctuations, what you actually will do is you will probably do a stop loss or you will actualize the loss para hindi ka na matalo pa. But in peso or dollar cost averaging, what you would do is hindi mo siya iisipin dahil na-schedule mo na yung investment mo at that point in time. You will just buy whatever stock you can buy. So you put in the same 100 and this time, nakabili ka ng 2 stocks. So technically ngayon, meron ka ng 3 stocks So, yung 100 na binili mo in January, and then in February, bumili ka ng 100 pa rin, pero dahil 50 pesos na lang yung stock, nakabili ka ng dalawa. So, in total, meron kang tatlo for the 200 pesos that you paid. So, essentially, yung average cost per share mo is 67 pesos. So, 6 is 200 divided by 3. Right? So, the 67 pesos is now your average investment. So, kung ano man yung price, eventually, then that's the gain that you will have. Or kung ano man yung price pababa, that's the loss you will get. You keep doing this in regular intervals, and ideally, at least if you study past performance, and obviously, hindi siya guarantee in the future, but if you study past performance, this yields to a net gain overall longer term. You can do all of this through a local brokerage account. So you can do Call Financial or BPI Trade, BDO Nomura, MyTrade. I think there are a lot of options beyond these local brokers, but you can open an account with them fairly simply. And in a lot of cases, the minimum amount can be maybe 5 or 10,000 pesos to start. So no, stock trading is not only for the ultra rich. You can actually do this as a retail investor and start your own investment journey. I won't talk a lot more about stock trading in this stream, but I can probably upload a video on how do you think through stock trading if you really want to start. The other one is a bit more in the news, and I think I had questions earlier on eToro. On eToro, it's more social trading, but eToro actually gives us an opportunity to go into global security, so you can actually buy multiple shares from multiple companies, and you can also take advantage of the social aspect of eToro. So let me just do a quick screen share so that you will be able to see what eToro looks like. So eToro will have a virtual account. I will, in spirit of privacy, I will not show the real portfolio, but I will show you a virtual account. In your eToro platform, you will actually be given about $100,000 of play money that you can play around in the website. What you will have is a watch list, so you can actually watch stocks that you will want to get into, so you can check and take a look at different stocks in different markets. You can take a look at US stocks, but you can also take a look at maybe Tencent, a stock that is maintained in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So very, very interesting because now you're delving into global markets and no longer just the Philippines. You will also see that within your eToro account, you can also access cryptocurrency. So sa cryptocurrency, you can select crypto, and since crypto is traded 24/7, you actually see the fluctuations in the price of crypto as we speak. So this is the real price of crypto right now. So you can buy at 33,886, for example, and then you can sell for 33,600. That's the current rate if you want to get into Bitcoin for now. So just to demonstrate, as long as you have money, you can actually get into Bitcoin. Click on trade. If you want to buy your own Bitcoin, so let's say mayaman ako kasi fake money naman to, I will put in $5,000 at the current market price, and I will just click on open trade. Right? Just a very, very quick demo. You would see that you now have an investment of $5,000 and meron na tayong 0.8% loss. So if you go to your portfolio, you will now see that you have Bitcoin as part of your portfolio, and then makikita mo na yung fluctuations in the price. After that, if you want to check or if you want to buy more, then you do exactly the same thing. You can set different kinds of stop losses or take profit. So meaning set ka ng amount to buy and sell. Yes, and then you can also do other things with stocks. Now, I think Steph asked earlier if eToro is considered as an ETF. eToro is in fact a platform, but eToro does sell ETFs. So you can actually take a look on different kinds of ETFs. If you just search for ETFs, you can find many different things. The most common ones will be the Vanguard ETFs, and all of these will follow a certain basket of stocks. So remember, yung sinabi natin kanina, for ETFs in the Philippines, isa lang kasi siya. So ang ginagawa lang niya is sinusunod lang niya yung PSEI. But now you see, just in eToro, there are 252 different kinds of ETFs. So medyo marami kang pagpipilian. In the same way, if I, for example, select the most common one, which is VOO. So this one is given by Vanguard. Vanguard is the company, and it's following S&P 500, which is the index of the 500 biggest companies in the US. So ito yung bibilhin mo. When you buy this, you're essentially buying 500 companies worth. Right? Similar to what we discussed in the FM ETF. So then you just do exactly the same thing. You can buy at market or you can set a rate. So pwede mong sabihin that I will only buy this if yung rate becomes 330. Kasi naniniwala ka pa na bababa. What you can then do is you can set the amount and then you can set an order and then eToro will just buy this ETF for you as long as the price is triggered and the market is open. As we speak, the markets are closed because it's a weekend. But if it's 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. in the States, in New York specifically, then this transaction will actually go through. So you can then just click set order. Pwede mo siyang hayaan lang dyan. It will not show up in your portfolio because the markets are closed, unlike si Bitcoin when the market for cryptocurrency never closes. So you can actually just see that as a pending order. Just one last thing on eToro, which is actually, I think, the unique thing about the platform, is that you can actually copy people. So ito naman, ang ginagawa mo, remember our discussion earlier on mutual funds? What you're actually doing is you're technically buying the portfolio of a fund manager. So dito, you can actually find different kinds of people, and then they will all have different results. So for example, let's just pick this one out of random. Right? So this si Olena. You can actually see ano ba yung performance ng kanyang portfolio over time, meaning in total, ito yung nangyari sa kanya in 2020, in 2021, so far may 11% gain siya. Right? In 2020, okay yung performance niya because even if may loss in 2 months, she actually earned about 53% in total. Then you can also take a look kung saan ba si Olena naglalagay ng investments niya. So you will see that these are all of the companies na nilagyan niya. So may Alibaba, PayPal, and also Bitcoin, Facebook, etc. Right? So she has all of these companies under her portfolio, and that's what she's been investing in. Now, if you don't know how to diversify or if you're very new, you may want to actually take a look at the copy people function of eToro, because then at least this somehow gives you like a fund manager who will manage the fund for you. All you have to do is copy and you click in an amount. So for example, we can start with with $5,000, and you can put in a stop if ng value niya nag-drop na below 3,000, meaning kung sobrang laki na ng loss. And then you can just click on copy. And then what that will do is if you go to your portfolio, now si Olena is like an ETF technically that you're buying for 5,000 worth. Right now, gumagalaw yan because si Bitcoin is a part of Olena's portfolio. So gumagalaw siya kanina if you can remember. See here, because it's always open. But then everything else is not moving because the markets are closed. So when the markets are open, then you would see some volatility in the price din of the investment that you made under Olena, basically. So in this case, it looks like you're buying one thing, but you're technically buying this entire basket of investments. So it's almost like an ETF, if you will. So yun yung cool how do you call this? Cool facility ni eToro or feature ni eToro. Okay. So I did not see I was not seeing comments, so let me just go through a bit. So Steph likes the copy trading, so that's good. So good if you are able to follow. I know Clint has been stalking me. I don't know if you are following my trades. So if I lost you any money, I am so sorry. But you will be able to see that there are different cases that you can follow. You can follow the more renowned ones that will show up in the list earlier that we did. For example, in the example, or pwede din actually that you can follow a friend. So ito na. So Shawi is asking Kat, kung pwede niya i-copy yung portfolio, the answer is actually yes. So you can look for Kat's profile in eToro and i-copy niyo yun, and then you copy at your own risk kasi kung anong gagawin ni Kat, technically that exactly will happen to the funds that you copied over to that portfolio. So kung naglagay tayo ng $5,000 doon, whatever happens or whatever Kat's decision was on her own portfolio, then you will be able to copy all of the trades na ginawa niya for during the day. Right? So you can always do this using the virtual money platform because at least then you're not risking any real amount of money, which is good. But then if you are able to trust the person, like for example, ito na may mga pressure na in the chat to actually copy somebody who's trading in eToro, then you can actually put in real money, and then from there you can actually trade kasi technically you're doing exactly the same thing that the person you're copying. That makes sense. So this is a good tip for everyone na new to this. If you find somebody you like, and there are a lot of different resources online that will actually give you sino ba yung mga okay na return, sino ba yung hindi okay yung performance in the last year, you will have access up to until the last 3 years of results nung tao na yun na ika-copy nyo. So you can actually see some level of performance. And if you're okay with that risk level, then you can go ahead and copy that person. Okay, I will move on and answer the first two questions. So, for example, let me just go into the next slide. Okay. So before we go into the last few things, let me take Justin's question. Right? So Justin's question was actually, so among index funds, FM ETF looks like the best option because it only has a 0.5% management fee versus the bank's index UITF, which charge 1%, which is actually true. So Justin has done his assignment and checked all of the fees. This is one of those small nuances doon sa topic natin earlier on mutual funds and the UITFs. What happens is if you look at the different kinds of mutual funds, the fees will vary depending on the provider. Typically, it will range from 0.5% being the cheapest and 2.5% I think being the most expensive that I have seen so far. So magdidepend siya on a variety of factors, but essentially, yun yung charge ng manager for managing your fund. So Justin, the answer to your question is FMETF actually is good as an option. The only counter argument for FMETF is in trading volume, hindi masyadong maraming bumibili at nagbebenta. So it can be slightly not very liquid if you need the money right away. So but from a cost standpoint and from a delivery of the index standpoint, FMETF was actually doing pretty well. When I say delivery, meaning nakokopya talaga niya yung index. So you really move with the Philippine market. So it's something to worry about. If this funds that you don't need immediately and medyo may leeway ka, FMETF is a good option, especially if you already have a brokerage account because you can technically already buy the FMETF the next time the market opens. Okay. And then I will also go back to Steph because Steph's question was more for retirement funds. And I think now that we've talked about a variety of different kinds of investments, when you think about retirement funds, yung question is Steph is, if I put first in riskier vehicles, if I have the luxury of time, 25 plus years, and then move to safer vehicles when I'm a few years away from retirement. So Steph, this is actually the perfect answer. So what you can actually do, if you can still take some more risk because matagal ka pa naman mag-retire and you will be able to give the market time to recover just in case may COVID ulit or something like this happens, then I would suggest that you can put into some riskier assets para ma-maximize mo yung return. remember, yung return mo is highly correlated to the amount of risk that you take. So for example, if sobrang takot ka, then you probably will put it in a money market fund. Now, the money market fund will give you maybe 1 to 2% interest per year. So even if you have a long period of time, yung money mo will only grow 1 to 2% per year. So you can probably do that. And then once you're nearing retirement, you can actually move it into safer investments like bonds or money markets. And I would just add to your question, which is actually already an answer, so very good, is to just make sure that you regularly check your investments para alam mo lang if it's performing the way it was planned to perform. Okay? Cool. And then maybe the last question before we go into closing, Justin asked if you have a loan with a higher interest rate than most other instruments, i.e. a car loan or a home loan, right? Which is 5 to 7%, which I think is still the rate today. Is it better to pay them off or put them into investments? So very, very good question. The answer to this is very, very personal because while in most cases, if you have an interest that is higher than yung nakuha mong return on the investment, the logical advice would be to pay off the loan with a higher interest. This is no different than maybe a credit card na sobrang mahal ng interest rate. So if you have a rate na mataas doon sa ine-expect mo na return, then I would say pay off the loan. It also gives you the added benefit of being at financial peace dahil wala ka ng utang sa bank, especially with mortgage and car loans. That can be a bit of a burden to think of kasi parang ang tagal nilang matapos. So if you have money and if you think that the return anyway will be lower than the interest rate, then I would suggest you pay off the loan. But obviously do your due diligence. However, if baliktad siya and you actually expect higher returns from an investment versus the loan rate, then you can probably think of baka better na ilagay mo siya in investment and then you just keep paying your loan over time because you're gonna net out positive kasi mas mataas yung na-earn mo from the investment. So again, very, very personal. I know other people who want to pay off all their debts right away kasi nasistress sila kung may utang. So that also takes into consideration personal preference. Okay? And just to close off a bit, there are many more. So you have real estate, which I didn't even talk through, that you can buy real estate property and then you can rent or you can wait for the prices to go up, like for condos in particular, or you can do an Airbnb business. Or you can do other kinds of businesses and invest your seed money into it. You can do all of this and actually earn more. The most important part is that you realize where you're putting your money in and ano ba yung underlying thing na binibili nyo. Because in most cases, in finance, you're gonna be thrown by a lot of these different terms na nakakalito na sa lahat-lahat kasi parang naghalo-halo na sila. So the most important thing is that you understand saan ba talaga siya nakalagay at the end of the day. And if you are open to actually exposing yourself to the risk and potential returns of that investment. So maybe my only suggestion is learn it. There's a lot of different venues to learn. So you can join Facebook groups like FinLit. You can take online courses for free, or you can follow YouTube channels like mine or other people who are more experienced than me so that you can learn from whatever we have to share. But obviously, come out with a plan that you can commit to and start. And even if you start small, I think it's gonna be okay as long as you're able to keep going and keep true to your plan. Right? So this is my last slide. I will entertain questions after that. So I know sobrang daming information. So I hope I still have you and your attention. But yes, so any other questions that I will gladly answer. Okay. Erica is asking for handouts, so I will send. I can probably upload a copy of the slides, parang prof lang. But I can probably upload copies of the slides if you want to download of any of that from my blog. So I'll put a link in the description box after the live stream is uploaded. And Boyang is asking actually a bit more basic question of but very very valid of paano ba talaga kumikita yung investments. In different cases, they earn in different ways. So, some cases, kung nagpautang ka using the peer-to-peer lending, then you earn from the interest income. If for example, nilagay mo siya sa stocks, then nag-move yung price ng stocks because if the companies do well over time, then the value of that company increases. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. It really depends on saan mo ba nilagay. If it's real estate, then if the property increases its price, then you actually earn from that investment as well. So very, very important on understanding what investments you chose, and then from there you'll be able to understand what the underlying reason kung bakit ka kumikita is gonna be the answer to this question. Yeah, cool. So any other questions that you may have, so we can go back to a previous topic in the slides, or anything na hindi masyadong related, anything a bit more practical on your side that you think the group will benefit from. I am very very happy to take more questions, maybe for the next 5 minutes or so. Okay, so if you have any questions, just type them in. Uh, I am trying to go through and make sure I did not miss any question. But if you have any questions, just feel free to add them still. And I would also be remiss to not shout out a couple of different groups of people. So thank you for PNG friends who are very, very active in the chat. Also, personal friends and family. So the Viola and the Barrera family in Las Piñas. And also to my own family in Bacolod and other parts of the world. And also to Shell HR team, I know you're joining, and also to my FinLit group friends. Thank you for joining and taking time to actually go through, and you can also count on me to share more content that will probably help, and then I'll keep inviting you to future live streams or even other videos. So thanks for joining, and I'm seeing a few more questions come in. So Steph is asking, is there any reason why a bigger portion of your portfolio is on real estate? The real answer is actually, I think, it's just because I started early and I entered real estate at the time when medyo mababa pa yung prices in the market. So, and now I'm able to get a good amount of return on those real estate. So that's one. And then number two, I think I also focused on a few opportunities that came my way. So I think medyo na over invest in real estate, if that's a valid answer. But I want to also try to load balance against different investments na mas more liquid. But that's the only reason. Opportunity, and I'm getting a good gain on the investments I did maybe 6-7 years back on real estate. Okay. Jairus has a question. So, best investment vehicle for a 1-year goal. If you want to add to your emergency fund, so very, very good question. 1 year, very, very short for all of the speculative investments. So I would really say don't put in money to stocks and whatnot, especially if you really need the money maybe in a year. So what you can do, especially that you're building your emergency fund, you can try to leverage the digital banks first. They offer very good interest at about 4% at the promo rate. So you can take advantage of that. And even CIMB, for example, has a what do you call this? A free insurance promo that you will actually get coverage if you deposit an amount of money with them. So I would take advantage of that for emergency funds because they are very liquid. If you need them, you can take them almost immediately, and still you're getting a return on the asset that you put in. So since it's 1 year, I think that's the most prudent thing. If you're a bit more aggressive, then you could probably do some speculative day trading. But I personally don't advise you doing it kasi medyo nakakatakot if 1 year lang yung horizon mo, like what we were talking about earlier. Okay, Kenneth has a question. So thanks, Kenneth, for asking. And Jairus, that was a good question. So Kenneth, you're asking on how do you know about what companies or businesses to invest in, and then what do you look for when it comes to a business or a business owner? So I'm not very sure if you're talking about stocks or this is like a personal business venture. So if you can probably comment it down while I answer the first part. I'm assuming that if you are referring to companies like stocks to invest in, what I would really suggest is for the most or the majority of the money that you want to put that into the stable businesses that you believe in. So, for example, I will personally come out and say, I personally trust in, say, the Ayala Corporation's strategy longer term. So if I were to put money into a certain business, I actually try to look at what are the priorities and the values of the company. If they are in line with your values, then that's probably gonna be an investment that you can sleep with at night, and hindi ka matatakot, and you actually know that your money is being put into good use. But you can also play around with a few speculative companies, like maybe a Dito, for example, if you feel na there's still an upside because they're gonna be a third player in telco. So I would say from a local Philippine standpoint, maybe that is a contrast to answer your question. But maybe at a global case, right? For example, I agree with Kat, the Apple stocks, right? Or the tech stocks, for example. Like, I am personally bullish on Tesla. So if you see the Elon Musk video in my channel, probably nakakalata that I'm an Elon Musk fan. So I try to follow the story behind Tesla and all that. So I think you look for the companies that you believe um, will really shine through in the areas that you want them to shine through. Like, for example, if there's really a way for us to reinvent transportation and go all in electric, right, which is what Tesla really wants to do, then I'm all in for that, and I want to bet with that company as well. Apple, for example, has been very, very stable as a company. So you can also choose those. So I would start with those. And also, I agree with Kat, look at the longer term trend of the stock, because you would really see if the stock has been steadily performing really well. Some of them will really be exponential, like an Amazon or Tesla, which can probably be medyo mga one-off. But if you look at the Microsofts, Apples, Google, P&G, Shell. Shell maybe not so much because of COVID, but ex-COVID doing very, very well. Try to take a look at those companies, Coca-Cola, J&J. Those companies offer very stable returns, and they actually are are quite ethical in most cases, right? So I think as long as they line up with your values and you believe in what they're planning to do, yun I think yung mananaig versus yung FOMO dahil lang sinasabi sa social media na ito yung stock that will come. That's not to say this whole GameStop thing, and I know tatawa kayo kasi I just uploaded a video earlier today on this whole GameStop. If you're following that news, feel free to check the video right after. This one is probably like really speculative, not really a long-term investment kind of thing. So if you're thinking about life savings, please do not put your money on GameStop for the longer term. Um, and then, yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Kenneth. I think you were asking stock, so I think I got it right. What else do we have here? So Erica is asking a good question. So, timing is everything. Not really. So, but in a sense, yes, right? I mean, but you don't really know if it's down or up. Like right now, the PSE is at about a high 6,000. So I think 6,800 or something. I'm not very sure of the number, but some people would say that that is low. Some people will actually say that the PSE will go down to a further 5,000, right? So I don't really know if that's high or low. I would say consistency and building wealth over time is probably the way to go if you want to look at it from a long-term standpoint. But obviously, right, if you believe that the 6,800 or 900 range is actually a dip, which it is from the high of 9,000 just about 2 years ago, then by all means, I would say top up. But again, not we don't really know if it's gonna go down further. COVID is not yet anyway addressed. So there may be really differences that maybe 6,900 is high, maybe a few months from now. Not that I hope that that will happen. I'm just saying you don't really know. Right? And cool. Kenneth has another question on Elon Musk's opinion regarding battery-powered car industry, considering that there are different battery-powered car startups coming from different countries. And I'm sure you're talking about NIO and the likes. I would say electronic vehicles or battery-powered cars in general are probably the next real thing to hit the world. And with greenhouse gas emissions at an all-time high, I think it's also the right thing to do moving forward. Now, will Tesla be toppled down by these new battery technologies? And for everyone who's not aware, there are actually a lot of different electronic vehicle companies from other countries, particularly in China, who are doing new developments on batteries. So I would say um, it's still an industry overall that will grow, no doubt about it, because all of the big car manufacturers said they will move to electronic. Will Tesla continue to be the leader? Probably not as big a gap today, but I think it will take time for the others to catch up just because Tesla is really way ahead of the competition right now. But that's not to say that the likes of a NIO or even maybe the more traditional car manufacturers like Ford, um, and all of those similar companies will not be able to catch up very, very quickly. So again, I think overall industry will go up, and I think that's where the growth will come from. Now, will Tesla continue to be the number one company? Only time can tell. Okay. And I think very related question. So Boying is asking on Nicola again, different approach. They're all talking about trucks and all of these kinds of things. So I would say very, very hard to answer the question. The answer is I don't know. But I think the answer that I would give is if you believe that the stock is really good and the company is actually making something meaningful out of it, then by all means go in and just make sure that you put in enough money that you are willing to lose or gain from depending on how much you really believe in the stock. Because if we're talking small dollars, it's very easy to sort of speculate. But if you're talking life savings, I would go back to the ones with long-term fundamentals that are okay, right? The ones that are blue chips and the ones who have proven track record, like without meaning to over promote companies like P&G and Coca-Cola and all of these kinds of consumer goods, while they may not be rocket level growth like Tesla in the last year, they've also been proven to be very consistent even during a pandemic. So again, any prediction in price is as good as another person's prediction. So Kat is saying NEO will be 300 at the end of the year, which is gonna make us happy because we have positions in NEO. But again, we don't really know if what's gonna happen in the industry. And then this just really highlights stocks in general, right? So I would really say, I think to I don't see a lot more questions coming in. So I'm gonna end with Erica's comment, which really goes back to when we talk about stocks and even cryptocurrency. If you really believe in the company or the product, really just invest in those kinds of companies so that you feel safe and you feel secure with the decisions that you make. You still wouldn't know, right? For all we know, Apple may be obsolete in the next 10 years. So we really don't know what disruption will come, but I think long-term trends and how you study the market, just continue to keep an eye out so that you are at least aware of the trends that are happening. And Tata is saying that Tesla has been there and back, and I agree. So I hope that this, I don't see any more new questions. Kenneth puts out a good point. Once you have investment, think of it as lost money so you will be able to sleep comfortably at night. I know it is easier said than done, but yes, especially now that you place it in there, you're really risking it out, and that's the nature of stocks. But again, if you diversify, if you put in the horizon, and if you do some research on the basics, um, you should be okay. I think should be quite manageable. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I know we ran over time by about 15 minutes, but I'm happy answering questions that you may have. So if you have any other questions that we couldn't capture in the stream, feel free to comment it down once the stream is uploaded. I will try my best to reply. I try to reply to all comments, so just feel free to ask. If you have any further suggestions on maybe topics in a future stream, and I hope to do maybe one or two every month, please reach out. You can comment, you can email me at hello@thepesopro.com. These are my links, so you can search for channel. I hope you subscribe before you leave. Thank you to all of you who have subscribed. And we reached the 1,000 subscriber milestone. Sorry, today, very, very interesting timing. I didn't know it will happen during the stream. So thank you for all who have supported, and I do write blogs also at thepesopro.com, so feel free to check it out. And then let me know any of your thoughts, and I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you on the next stream and in the next videos. Thanks everyone. Bye bye. Happy weekend.